Good morning, everybody. It is a lovely morning indeed. It's like 60, 62 degrees here at 8 o'clock in the morning in Greensboro. Uh, have you heard about the George Zimmerman and the Travon Martin case? And if you have not, then you must indeed be living under a rock. Not really, because some people just don't watch the news as much as I do. But this is not only in the news, this has gained so much national attention that everybody is talking about it. And it stems from the Stand Your Ground law that they have in Florida. To sum the case up, because I'm sure most of you know about it, but to sum the case up, George Zimmerman shot and killed 17-year-old Travon Martin. Travon Martin was in his dad's neighborhood visiting with his dad and his dad's fiance, and had walked down to the corner store and bought a bag of Skittles and an iced tea, and was on his way home. And it was raining, and he had on a hoodie, so he put his hood up, stood over to the side under like a clubhouse or something under the shelter, and waited for the rain to let up. Well, the neighborhood watch captain, George Zimmerman, was patrolling. He saw Travon standing over there waiting for the rain to ease up. He called 911 and reported that there was a strange man in the neighborhood. He talked to 911. They played all the 911 tapes. They've been playing them all over the news. Well, he said that he didn't know who he was. He said, I don't know what he's up to. He's on drugs or something. Then he goes on to say he's got his hand in his waistband. Then he says, yeah, he's checking me out. Well, of course, if somebody is following you, like he was following Travon, you're not going to take your eye off of them. Yeah, Travon's going to keep his eye on this guy that's following him in a truck, of course. So then somehow it supposedly stemmed over something that had happened like a month or so before that, where there was apparently a black male in the neighborhood that tried to break into somebody's house. So he's going to use that as an excuse to say, well, I thought this might be the guy that was trying to break in the neighborhood because I'm the neighborhood watch captain. So anyway, while he's talking to 911, he's like, he's running. Now bear in mind, George Zimmerman said he's running, talking about Travon. Then he goes on to say, these assholes always get away. That's a racial slur. These assholes always get away. Well, what does that mean? So, the 911 operator said, are you following him? And he said, yeah. And they said, okay, we don't need you to do that. And he said, okay. George Zimmerman should have stayed right where he was and waited for the police to arrive. The police were on their way. But he did not stay there. Instead, he continues to follow Travon. Now, bear in mind, Travon is going in the opposite direction. You have to be going in the opposite direction for someone to be following you. Travon was not coming to him, or he wouldn't have had to follow Travon. So he was following Travon. He gets out and approaches Travon and says, what are you doing here? Travon says, my dad's here. Then there was a scuffle, and Travon was dead. George Zimmerman claims self-defense. How can that be self-defense? Like I said, if you're following someone. He also said that he feared for his life. He was the pursuer. He was pursuing Travon. And then, bear in mind, like I said a while ago, he said he's running. Then he should have let him go away for the police to get there and take care of it. Just because he's the neighborhood watch captain does not give him a right to do what he did. And besides, when he got out and approached Travon, and Travon said, my dad's here, George Zimmerman should have said, I'm George Zimmerman. I'm the neighborhood watch captain. And I noticed I had not seen you in the area. Where does your dad live? Could have said that. The boy would have pointed it out. It would have all been cleared up. And it's just as simple as that. But George Zimmerman is going to try to say that it was self-defense because of the stand your ground law. The stand your ground law really just should never been in place in the first place, because if it's that easy to kill somebody just because you fear for your safety, I believe you have the right to kill somebody if someone comes into your home on you. Now, this is my ground in my home, and if you're approaching me in my home and you don't belong here and I fear for my safety, I will kill. That's not the case on the street. Stand your ground law. Well, Travon Martin was standing that ground too. Travon Martin was the one actually standing. George Zimmerman was in the truck until he got out and decided to stand on the ground that Travon Martin was already standing on. That's neither here nor there. But if that being the case, that you could simply take somebody's life because you fear for your own, then everybody be killing everybody. It'd be like back in the days of the Wild Wild West. Or somebody can say, well, I can't stand that neighbor lady over there, and then you might leave your headlights on. She might come across and not ring your doorbell, because you left your headlights on. She's going to tell you. And then you just bring out a gun and shoot her. Oh, officer, she was in my doorway, and she argued with me all the time, and she was at my door, and she was approaching me, and I feared for my life, so I shot her. Oh, well, okay, well, we understand. It's all the same thing. But and I know, if Travon Martin had a gun on him, perhaps, had he had a gun on him and shot George Zimmerman, Travon Martin would be in jail. And that's a sad truth. And let's leave race and color and Hispanic and everything out of this. These are just people. And a lot of times on the news they'll refer to this as the little boy. Travon Martin was not a little boy. He was 17. In 1 year he would be able to serve our country. So I prefer to call him a young man, which is what he was. The police department is going about this all wrong. I think that they're protecting George Zimmerman too much because, according to the news, they said they're not quite sure where George Zimmerman is at. He's probably in protective custody. Again, the citizens and the taxpayers are paying for this, make no mistake. And they, some of the attorneys and reporters seem to think, and in their own words, not mine, but in their words, that they believe that the police department has adopted George Zimmerman as one of their own because he was the neighborhood watch captain. Now, some people were saying last night on the news that they feel like George Zimmerman was being a vigilante because he was pursuing Travon. Travon was talking on the phone to his girlfriend, and his girlfriend was saying that Travon was telling her that some guy's following me. She kept telling him to run, and he said, I ain't going to run. And she kept telling him to run, just get out of there. On the 911 tape, when some of the other people called, when there was a scuffle between Travon and George Zimmerman, there was a scuffle, and apparently a fight took place between them. Nobody actually saw the fight, but it's speculated that George Zimmerman, since he did approach Travon, was the one who started the initial fight. On the 911 tape, there's some people calling saying that they hear a scuffle outside. There's a fight. They don't know what's going on. And especially 911 tape made by this one woman. She said that she heard screaming outside and that she don't know what's going on and she can't see anything. And they asked her, they asked her if she could see anything. She said no. She said, but she could hear screaming. And in the background, you could hear a high-pitched scream. She said, I think he's calling for help, but I can't see, and I don't know what's going on, and I don't want to go out there. Because she, understandably so, she wasn't sure what she'd be walking out there into. And you could hear the screaming in the background, and then you heard a gunshot, and then no more screaming. They played that 911 tape for Travon's parents. Travon's parents identified those screams as the screams of their son, Travon Martin. George Zimmerman claims that those screams came from him. He's saying that he was the one screaming like that because he felt like his life was in danger. Why would this grown man be screaming like that in such a high-pitched scream if he's the one pursuing this person and he's the one that's got the gun? It doesn't make any sense. And why would the parents cry and break down and say that's their son screaming on there? You know, this should simply be a case of right and wrong, that this law needs to go, and George Zimmerman needs to be arrested, and he needs to go to court, and he needs to be in front of a jury and let the judge and the jury decide. But some people's going to make this a race issue, and they're going to think that he needs to go to jail just because he shot a young black man. Like I said, leave the race out of this. George Zimmerman does need to go to jail. He needs to go to trial. If anybody else had done this, they said it was also that the neighborhood watch captains or members of the neighborhood watch were not supposed to carry weapons while patrolling the neighborhood. Now, what about that? Did he not break the law by doing that? He had to have. He had a gun and a concealed weapon, sure. He could have had it in his vehicle, yes. But he exited the vehicle and went up to Travon. That means he had the gun on his person. Now, he broke the law by having a gun on him when, in fact, it said they are not supposed to carry a weapon. The 911 told him to stop chasing Travon. He continued to chase Travon. He couldn't have been that damn scared, and he could not have feared for his life. They say that George Zimmerman has called the police over 100 times in the past year and 3 months, and 46 times alone this year, and reported suspicious activity in the neighborhood. If that's 46 times this year, damn, that's like every 3 days he's calling the police reporting suspicious activity. If the neighborhood was that bad, this is supposedly a gated community, which is one of the nicer communities. If there was that much trouble going on, then there should be police patrol in the area. And I feel sure if a police officer had shot Travon Martin, well, he would probably be suspended. The least that they would have done would suspended him either with or without pay, put him on administrative leave until they found out all the details. They haven't done anything to George Zimmerman except put him in hiding and protect him. George Zimmerman knows somebody on the inside in that police department. You know this, and I know this. This was no accident. George Zimmerman did not fear for his life. But I'll tell you what, I feel like he better fear for his life now. And he will probably fear for his life for a very, very long time. Be it in jail or out of jail, because either way, somebody's going to be looking for George Zimmerman. And some people say, excuse me, they'll say, well, it was the stand your ground law, and I don't think George Zimmerman really did anything wrong, and blah, blah, blah. That's just not true. That's not true at all. If this was your child, if you feel that way, and this was your child that was killed because of a stand your ground law, would you let it go? Would you say, well, he killed my child because that was the law. He was just defending himself, and he couldn't really tell what my son had in his pocket. No, you wouldn't feel that way. Nobody would feel that way. He needs to answer for what he did to this young man, and he needs to answer it in a court of law. And you know, he lied and said that he was screaming because he feared for his safety. Well, now he's going to have to live with that fear literally for the rest of his days, because like I said, somebody is going to be looking for George Zimmerman. Just like in the case of Rebecca Zahau. And for those of you who may or may not remember her, she was the girlfriend of the billionaire Jonas Shacknai, whose son fell over the rail and hit the chandelier on the way down and died several days later under her watch. And then right after he died, Rebecca Zahau was found naked with her feet tied, her hands tied behind her back, hanging over the balcony by the neck. And the police were real quick after they saw that to call that a suicide. Case open, case closed. Suicide. Rebecca Zahau killed herself, they say. And that is simply not true. You know that. I know that. The police know that. And so after that, they had the FBI get in and investigate it. But I really haven't heard anything else about that. So I guess nothing's going to come of it. Yes, the police are real quick to jump in there and say open and shut case. I do believe they have the FBI now involved in the Zimmerman case. I believe they have that. And they better move it along and do something. Look, Casey Anthony walked. We all know she was guilty. George Zimmerman might walk. We know he's guilty. Or leastwise let him go before a court, a jury. That would at least maybe settle a lot of the communities and stuff if they just make him go to trial. And if he really is innocent and didn't do anything, then he has nothing to fear about going to trial. Maybe it will settle a lot of things down. But, like I said, he just better watch his back. And that's all I have to say about this right now. I'm sure I'll be on here to do some more about it because when I start uploading this, I'm either going to think of something I left out or they're going to come up with something new on the news because it's all over the news and it's staying on the news. And give me, what are your thoughts and your opinions on this case? And until next time, bye-bye.